If we wanted to get inside the culture, what would we have to know? First off, the first thing you notice are all the Trump signs, man.
Yeah, it's very, very conservative. Even if like your parents have money, you're not recognized as cool if people know that your parents are buying you everything.
Oh, yo, so that's interesting, right?
It's kind of important because you have to do what you have to do. I mean, like, sort of in rural Ukraine, a lot of people sort of like their day, like what they do to make a living is like they sell.
And so that's a big aspect of especially like the Amish people's lives because they're living.
I think a common thread that stuck out to me was
And I chose you because you're of Ukrainian roots, and you go back to Ukraine and spend time in rural areas, right? On a farm, family farm? Yeah? Okay. And Evan, you are from an area outside of State College that's very rural, okay?
Yeah, it's about 30 minutes south here.
What would an outsider see? Know like what is and isn't cool in that rural culture in which you're connected to, okay? Like how would we be able to identify what is and isn't cool? What is cool?
Like when they first show up, like kind of the feeling they get?
What would we see that we'd say like, oh, that's cool? Or if we wanted to get inside the culture, what would we have to know?
I think the biggest thing is that they don't like to be told what to do. They kind of definitely do their own thing, and if anybody tells them otherwise, they stand up to that person. I think a lot of it is they have a lot of confidence in themselves. And they don't really like to be pushed around a lot.
So, and you interact with the Amish a lot too, right?
I do, yeah, all the time.
Which is very much like really.
Yeah, they're a very polarized case of that, where they are so one way that they seclude themselves in the mountains and on farms, and they're self-sustaining, and they work with the other Amish, but not really us unless they're selling produce, and that's how they make a living.
And so there's this idea that they're the city people, right?
Yeah, they call us like the English.
The English? Okay. And then if you're not Amish, you're just the city people, right? People say like up in the college.
Yeah.
Up in the college. I hear that when I go out in the rural areas. First off, the first thing you notice are all the Trump signs, man.
Yeah, it's very, very conservative. I don't know. Yeah, there's maybe a few Democratic signs every once in a while, but for the most part, lots of Trump flags.
It's like miles and miles of Trump. Like as soon as you get outside of State College, right?
Oh yeah, and they have big signs on their barns and everything.
And so what you're saying is there's a sentiment that it's like, don't tell me, I don't want like the city people telling me what to do. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Which is going to be true in Indonesia as well, right? Once you get outside the capital and the larger cities, it's going to be the same kind of thing. Okay, what else? What else would I see? What else is like, what are cool people doing that makes them cool?
I mean, I would say that like from my high school specifically, getting a job and like working to pay for, a lot of times it's like to mod your truck out, and then you can go to the sheets at night and do burnouts in the parking lot with your friends. A lot of people think that's pretty cool to do.
Mm-hmm. But one thing is getting a job and paying for things yourself.
Yeah, definitely paying things yourself. Even if like your parents have money, you're not recognized as cool if people know that your parents are buying you everything.
Oh, yo, so that's interesting, right? We're talking about rural areas. We're talking about self-sufficiency, which means really take responsibility for yourself, pull yourself up, do whatever you got to do, get a job. Don't take handouts even from your parents, right? That's not cool. Like make things happen on your own and then go pay for them, even at a young age. And that's a cool thing. So no wonder like there's this idea that people in the cities tend to support Democrats, and they tended to support Harris, right? And people in more rural areas tend to support Trump. And people have this idea that Republicans are all about individuals pulling themselves up, like taking responsibility, right? Don't rely on the government. We need a really small government. Don't rely on it. Just do whatever you got to do. And here you've got this, you go out in these rural areas and you got all these people who are living in rural areas, demanding self-sufficiency from themselves, and really being very critical of anybody who wants to take anything, expect other people to help them and take care of them.
Yeah, definitely.
Why do you think, but yet in the cities, in the urban areas, metropolitan areas, we look down on the folks that you're talking about, right?
I think a lot of times it's viewed as that they have less intelligence, or just it's viewed like they don't want to help people, but I think their ideals are closer to that they just want people to figure out for themselves how to be self-sufficient. And I think a lot of the rural areas, they have the ability to do that because they can have farms and stuff. They can grow food and interact with their neighbors.
Dude, they know how to do stuff, right? If your septic tank backs up, your toilet backs up, you know what to do about it. If you're from the suburbs of State College, all you do is get on the phone and call a plumber or someone.
Yeah, it's like when you live in those areas, you definitely know somebody that can do something like that. And there's like the self-sufficiency thing where you have your own job, but you can expect that, like you can ask for help, and then it's expected that you give that back. So if one person knows how to do something, they can help other people, and then that person will in return help them.
John, how about, okay, so go to the rural part of Ukraine where what do you see there?
I mean, having lived the luxury of American life, I mean, frankly, I think there isn't really much that is cool in, rural Ukraine. I mean, I think in Ukraine, or in the Slavic world generally, I think a lot of what counts as cool is being sort of Western. So, being into sort of American things like, cars. My cousins are very into cars.
So it's similar to here.
Yeah, I think there's a sort of American sort of bend to what counts as cool. But I think in the rural areas, I mean, especially where sort of my family comes from, it's very, very remote. I mean, I think I'd say one thing that's more important that he didn't mention was religion. Religion, very important. My family, both sides of my family, very Christian, and people go to church every week, and it's rather important.
Yeah, Ukrainian Orthodox Church.
Yes.
But listen, part of the reason transportation is really big because you have to get somewhere. It's not like you gotta have some transportation, some wheels to get 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 kilometers. Anytime you go anywhere, you have to. So that becomes a really big thing. How about the self-sufficiency piece?
It's kind of important because you have to do what you have to do. I mean, sort of in rural Ukraine, a lot of people sort of like their day. Like what they do to make a living is like they sell like fruit or something. Like they pick food and they sell it. So that's sort of part of their farming thing. It's
just not, but it's not even a given because you're gonna have to make things work on your own. What do people do day to day that separates the cool people from the less cool people? Do you know, or is that a thing, or is it not a thing?
I mean, I feel like everyone lives, based on my sort of limited experience, people live a pretty uniform lifestyle. So I think people just sort of you wake up in the morning, you go out to the farm, you dig up potatoes one day.
Yeah.
You send the cows to the place where
the outer pasture.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like in terms of what people do, I don't really know.
Yeah, that's it's interesting. I think people don't realize here, how poor Ukraine is.
Oh, it's
in
very
the rural
poor.
part. Yeah.
sort of my family on my mom's side, they were driving, the car that they drove to like get around the village was from like 1950s still, and they were like it was rusted through. There were holes through the bottom, So there's not a lot of money going around, and especially when like your day job is like picking berries and selling them at the market, like you can only make so much that way, especially when that's what everyone else is pretty much doing.
So, okay. So now I want to go, okay, this is big, right? So this is like even though there could be like layers of stratification, but it really matters, the level of connectivity that people have.
You did bring up a good point with the religion thing. Everybody's very connected to some belief in my town. Most of it, like 99% of it is probably Christianity. Mm-hmm. And so that's a big aspect of especially like the Amish people's lives, because they're trying to live in ways that God wants them to. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to live their life like pure, without material possessions, like only have what you need, don't take any more, and whatever you can share with other people, that's a good thing.
So that hey, by the way, in Amish culture, what do you have any idea what makes someone cool?
I don't know about the Amish culture, like the childhood and stuff, because I really just interact with most of the farmers. Probably just kind of similar to my high school, honestly, being able to work like efficiently, make money, and provide. They also have like some if you can like get kids, at least if you can get like English things, like sometimes they smuggle in like phones and stuff. Like that's cool for the kids at least.
Yeah.
So like childhood wise, anything relating to like the Western cultures is cool.
That's probably true in Ukraine, in a way.
Yeah, I definitely agree that, sort of people, especially now that the internet, the village on my mom's side, they got internet maybe like 10 years ago. So that's the first, other than that, like they basically, I think once that came in, and people started learning more about like sort of what counts as cool, like sort of what's out there on the sort of other, the more developed sides of the world. And I think it's part of that sort of American aspiration, I think.
Do you think people? So I was in Kyiv once. Do people see Kyiv? But I didn't go out to the rural areas. Do people see those as like the city people?
Yeah, definitely. Those are more of the like sort of more elite part of Ukraine.
So it's just like everywhere else in that sense. So I think okay. So here's my summary idea. There's this: the further you go, the more rural you go, the more you're on your own. The less you have people around you to help you, except your neighbors, and then the more responsibility you have to take for yourself and for your neighbors, and then your neighbors will help you and you will help them, but they're not going to help you if you don't help yourself or if you're not in a position to help them. And so that the two of you are saying is like that self-sufficiency is like, that's cool. That has to be seen as like a peak of coolness, because that's the difference between living and dying, surviving and not surviving.
I think a common thread that stuck out to me was like a common sentiment was just knowing who you are and sticking to your values is something that is universally seen as cool, or something that I've sensed so far.
So that actually goes back to to Indonesia,
right?
The Indo example.
Yeah.
Being who you are.
But then also, like it was echoed in this conversation as well, where like the Amish people like stick to what they do, and then even like in the more rural areas, like helping yourself, being self-sufficient, sticking to your values.
Yeah, sticking to your own values. Yeah, totally.
That in the idea of like rural versus urban, that if you're living more rurally, that people just kind of do stuff like they live more uniformly, and so there's kind of less opportunity for comparison. Whereas in the city, there's so many different people that you can compare and be like, that guy's cool, that guy's not cool.
Yeah.
Well, if everyone's just like a farmer, it's like, all right, there's only so much you can do to like be cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree that like I think the idea of cool it doesn't really like that's not super in the picture when it comes to like how people think of themselves in these areas, because I mean I think they're just thinking of this neighborliness or just like, you know, sort of collaboration kind of.
Well, this is like a thing, you know, like you don't want to stick up too much, right? Because if you rely on your neighbors and you need your neighbors, you got to be like your neighbors. And if you stand out in some way, then your neighbors aren't going to be feeling like you're one of them, and then they're not going to help you. And that's the essential piece here.